A ship cuts through the Mediterranean under a dying sun. On its deck stands a 19-year-old sailor who believes the world is finally opening for him. His name is Edmond Dantès. By the end of the day, the world will close like a fist. The Pharaon glides into the harbor of Marseille. The captain has died during the voyage, and it was Edmond, young, calm, decisive, who brought the ship safely home. The crew respects him. The owner, Monsieur Morel, sees promise in him. Promotion is already being whispered. Captain at 19. It should be impossible, but Edmond has that rare quality, quiet competence, the kind that makes older men uncomfortable, especially one of them. Danglars watches from a distance. He hides his resentment behind a polite smile, but envy is already carving plans inside his mind. Edmond doesn't see it. He rushes home first, not to celebrate, not to boast, but to see his father. The old man is frail, too frail. While Edmond was at sea, he survived on almost nothing, giving up food to repay a small debt his son didn't even know existed. Pride kept him silent. Edmond feels guilt like a blade in his chest. He swears things will change. Tomorrow he will marry Mercedes. Soon he will be captain. He will give his father comfort. For the first time in his life, everything feels aligned. By the sea, Mercedes waits for him. She has refused other offers. She has endured whispers. She has remained loyal. But there is one man who cannot accept that loyalty, Fernand. He loves her with a dangerous intensity, the kind that believes love is possession. He asks her again to choose him. She does not hesitate. Her heart belongs to Edmond. And in that moment, something breaks inside Fernand. Not sadness, resolve. Later that evening, in a dim tavern thick with smoke and jealousy, 3 men sit together. Danglars, Fernand, Caderousse, weak, drunk, easily led. They speak of Edmond's good fortune, his promotion, his marriage, his future. It feels unfair. It feels unbearable. Danglars suggests something small, harmless, he says, just a joke, a letter, an anonymous accusation. Edmond had delivered a package during the voyage, a letter from the dying captain to a Bonapartist supporter in Paris. France is unstable. The king is back. Napoleon is a shadow that still frightens powerful men. A whisper of treason is enough. Ink scratches across paper. A future is erased. The next day should have been the happiest of Edmond's life. The room is filled with laughter, music, wine. Mercedes glows beside him. His father watches with fragile pride. Then boots strike the floorboards. Soldiers enter. The music dies mid-note. Edmond is arrested for treason. He doesn't resist. He believes this must be a mistake. Truth will fix it. Truth always fixes things. He is brought before a young prosecutor, Gérard de Villefort, calm, controlled, ambitious. Villefort questions him and quickly realizes something chilling. The letter Edmond carried, the one he never even opened, was addressed to a powerful Bonapartist. That man is Villefort's own father. If this becomes public, Villefort's career is over before it begins. The young prosecutor stares at Edmond and sees 2 futures.
one where he protects an innocent sailor, one where he protects himself. He burns the letter, and with it, Edmond's life. He speaks gently, assures him everything will be resolved. Then he signs the order. No trial, no defense, no explanation. Edmond is transported by night to a fortress rising from the sea like a stone coffin, the Chateau d'If. He asks how long he will be held. The guards laugh. There is no sentence. There is no record. There is no timeline. He has not been judged. He has been removed. Days turn into weeks, weeks into something shapeless. At first, Edmond waits with confidence. Someone will come. Morel will speak. Mercedes will demand answers. Villefort promised.
But promises dissolve quickly in damp stone cells. His father weakens alone. Mercedes waits at the shoreline, staring at the horizon as if the sea might return him. Danglars quietly leaves Marseilles. Fernand remains near Mercedes, patient now, very patient. In Paris, political tides shift. Fear of Napoleon's return spreads. Men secure their positions. Careers are made on quiet betrayals. Villefort rises. Edmond rots. Hope begins to decay inside him. And in that darkness, something new begins forming. Not the naive sailor who believed in justice, not the boy who trusted authority, but something harder, something that will remember every face, every silence, every betrayal. A young man entered the prison innocent. The world thinks it buried him. The world is wrong. Months pass inside the stone belly of the sea. Edmond Dantès counts them at first. Then he loses count. The cell is small, damp, silent except for waves crashing against the fortress walls like a constant reminder the world is close but unreachable. At first, he believes someone will save him, his father, Mercedes, Morel, someone. No one comes. Hope turns into confusion, confusion into anger, anger into something heavier. One day, a rumor reaches even the prison walls. Napoleon has returned. The Corsican ogre, they call him. France trembles again. The king flees. Power shifts overnight. Edmond feels a sudden surge of hope. If the political world is changing, maybe his case will be reviewed. Maybe his imprisonment will finally make sense. But politics does not care about forgotten sailors. Napoleon rises, Napoleon falls, kings return, empires tremble, and Edmond remains in his cell, unseen, unheard, unimportant. In Marseille, life continues without him. His father weakens from grief and hunger. Mercedes waits, but even loyalty has limits when time stretches into silence. Fernand watches her closely. He is patient now, very patient. Back in the prison, Edmond begins to break. He screams for answers. He demands justice. The guards mock him. Finally, despair swallows him whole. He refuses food. If the world has buried him alive, he will choose his own end. Days pass. His body weakens. The darkness thickens. Then a sound, faint, metal scraping stone. At first he thinks it is madness, but it continues, slow, careful,
determined. Someone is digging from the other side of the wall. Hope explodes inside him like fire. He begins digging too, scraping at the stone with broken pieces of pottery, with his hands, with anything he can find. Days blur into feverish effort. Then, one night, the wall gives way. A hole opens. From the darkness emerges a thin, wild-eyed old man. Not a monster, not a ghost, a prisoner. For years, this man has been digging, trying to escape. He miscalculated and tunneled into Edmond's cell instead of the outer wall. For the first time in years, Edmond is not alone. The old man introduces himself as Abbé Faria, priest, scholar, scientist, political prisoner, genius. What Edmond thought was madness was calculation. Faria has been imprisoned for knowing too much, for thinking too deeply, for understanding power. He studies Edmond carefully, and then he begins asking questions, not about the prison, about the arrest, about the letter, about Villefort, about the men who had something to gain from Edmond's disappearance. Piece by piece, Faria reconstructs the conspiracy. Danglars, jealous of the promotion, Fernand, desperate for Mercedes, Villefort, protecting his father and his career. Edmond listens, and for the first time, the chaos becomes clear. This was not fate, this was design. He was not unlucky, he was betrayed. The knowledge transforms him. Pain sharpens into focus. Faria does more than reveal the truth. He educates him. History, politics, languages, mathematics, science, strategy. Inside a prison cell, Edmond receives the education of a prince. Years pass. The boy who entered the Château d'If disappears. In his place grows a patient mind, a calculating mind, a mind that no longer believes in mercy. One night, Faria confesses a secret. Before his arrest, he discovered something extraordinary, a hidden treasure, buried on the island of Monte Cristo. Gold, jewels, wealth beyond imagination, enough to buy influence, enough to reshape destinies, enough to destroy enemies, slowly, carefully, completely. He shares the location with Edmond, not out of greed, out of trust. But time is merciless. Faria suffers seizures, violent, unpredictable. Edmond nurses him, helpless. The old man fights to live long enough to escape together. He does not win. One final attack. Silence. The only man who brought light into the prison is gone. Edmond does not scream. He does not cry. He thinks.
And then he acts. He studies the way the prison disposes of bodies, wrapped in cloth, sewn into a sack, thrown into the sea. A dead man leaves the Château d'If. A living one does not, unless he takes the dead man's place. In the darkness of the night, Edmond switches himself with Faria's body. He lies still. He allows them to sew him into the burial sack. No air, no movement, no fear. The guards carry him to the edge of the fortress. They do not pray. They do not hesitate. They tie a heavy weight to his feet and throw him into the sea. The water swallows him. The rope pulls him downward, cold, crushing, absolute. He struggles against the fabric, against the weight, against death itself. And in that violent descent beneath the waves, Edmond Dantès dies. What rises from the Mediterranean will not be the same man. The sea does not forgive easily. Edmond fights against the weight dragging him down into black silence. His lungs burn, his hands tear through the burial sack. The knife he stole from Faria becomes his only ally. The rope snaps. He kicks upward, toward air, toward life, toward something new. He breaks the surface in the middle of a storm. Lightning tears the sky open. The fortress that held him for years is already disappearing behind waves and darkness. He does not look back. By morning, half dead and barely conscious, he reaches a small rocky island, nothing more than a jagged spine of stone rising from the sea. He collapses on the rocks. For the first time in 14 years, he is free. But freedom is useless without power, and he has nothing. No name, no money, no proof he even exists. Only knowledge and a secret. A ship appears on the horizon. Smugglers, hard men, suspicious eyes. They find him and debate whether to kill him or save him. Edmond chooses carefully. He does not beg. He invents. He claims he was shipwrecked. He speaks with intelligence, confidence, control. They test him. He proves useful. He joins them. Months pass at sea again, but this time Edmond watches everything. He studies men the way Faria once studied him, their weaknesses, their greed, their loyalties. He becomes invisible, quiet, observant, and when the moment comes, he asks them to land near a remote island, Monte Cristo. He hides his urgency behind calm words. The island is barren, sharp cliffs, no visible life, but he knows what lies beneath. While the smugglers camp, Edmond climbs alone into the rocky interior. Every step feels like destiny tightening its grip. He searches, measures, calculates, remembers Faria's instructions. Then he finds it. A concealed entrance, a stone moved centuries ago. Inside, a hidden chamber, untouched by time. He lights a torch, and the darkness explodes into gold. Coins spill from chests, jewels shimmer like captured stars, diamonds, rubies, sapphires, enough wealth to rewrite history. For a moment, Edmond does not move. 14 years stolen from him, 14 years of stone and silence, and now the power of kings lies at his feet. He laughs, but it is not the laugh of a joyful man. It is the sound of rebirth. He does not take everything at once. He is patient, strategic, careful not to reveal the scale of his discovery. He returns to the smugglers changed, subtly. He begins manipulating events. He stages a small injury to separate himself from them, buys supplies, disappears. By the time they realize what has happened, Edmond Dantès is gone. So is the poor sailor they once rescued. In his place travels a new figure, well-dressed, mysterious, wealthy beyond explanation. He moves through France like a shadow with unlimited resources. At an inn near the Pont de Gare, he begins testing his transformation. He observes reactions. How do people treat wealth? How do they react to power? He experiments with identity.
He learns that money opens doors faster than innocence ever could. He hears news of Marseille. His father is dead, starved, alone. Mercedes has married Fernand. The betrayal is complete. He does not explode. He does not rage. He calculates. The past is no longer something to mourn. It is something to settle. The world believes Edmond Dantès drowned. Good. Let them believe it, because the man now walking through Europe is not a victim. He is an architect, and he has just acquired the tools to design destruction.
The man who drowned in the Mediterranean left no body behind, but the world believes he is dead. That is his greatest advantage. He returns to Marseille quietly, not as Edmond Dantès, as a stranger. He walks through streets that once knew him. Nothing has changed, and yet everything has. He finds Caderousse first, the weakest link, a tailor now, poor, bitter, still drowning in wine and regret. Edmond does not reveal himself. He arrives dressed simply, calling himself a priest, Abbé Busoni. Calm voice, soft eyes, patient. He tells Caderousse he has come with news of Edmond Dantès. The name lands like a ghost in the room. Caderousse pales. Busoni speaks carefully, gently, drawing the story out like a surgeon extracting poison. At first, Caderousse claims ignorance. Then alcohol loosens truth. Piece by piece, the betrayal is confessed. Danglars wrote the letter. Fernand delivered it. Villefort buried it. And Caderousse did nothing. He watched. He let it happen. He chose comfort over courage. Edmond listens without emotion. Inside, every word is carved into stone. He asks about his father. Caderousse's voice softens. The old man died slowly, starved, broken by grief. No help came, no justice followed. Mercedes waited as long as she could. Then she married Fernand, who is now wealthy, respected, decorated for military service, a rising man. Danglars, too, has risen through banking and manipulation. Villefort has climbed higher in power. Only Edmond fell. The world rewarded the guilty. The innocent vanished. Caderousse begins to cry. He speaks of regret. He insists he never meant harm. He just didn't stop it. Edmond studies him. There are different kinds of guilt. The kind that acts and the kind that watches. Busoni produces a small diamond, part of the treasure of Monte Cristo. He claims it was meant for Edmond's friends to be divided among those who were loyal. Caderousse trembles. He names Morel as the only truly honest man in the story, the only one who tried to help Edmond. The diamond is left with Caderousse, but not without purpose. It is a test, a spark thrown into dry grass. Edmond leaves the inn knowing two things: the guilty prospered, the innocent suffered. That will change. Outside, night falls over Marseille. The harbor lights flicker against dark water. 14 years ago, he arrived here as a hopeful young sailor. Now,
He walks these streets as a phantom with unlimited wealth and a mind sharpened by imprisonment. He no longer seeks justice. Justice is random. He seeks balance, carefully constructed, mathematically precise. Each man will receive exactly what he deserves, nothing more, nothing less. And this time, Edmond Dantès will not be naive. He will be inevitable.
Before destroying his enemies, he needs certainty, proof. He travels to Paris and gains access to prison archives, cold ink, dry records, forgotten names. He finds it. His entry, number 34. No trial, no sentence, no explanation. Erased by design. He studies Villefort's signature. Calm handwriting, clean. A man who slept well after condemning another to a living grave. Edmond closes the register. The past is no longer blurry. It is documented. He returns to Marseille for one final task. Not revenge, not yet. Gratitude. Morel, the only man who tried to save him. Morel's shipping company is collapsing, ships lost, debts mounting, creditors circling like sharks. The once proud merchant now faces ruin. On the 5th of September, the deadline for payment, Morel prepares for disgrace and possibly suicide. That morning, a mysterious benefactor intervenes. Debts are paid. A lost ship reappears. Hope returns where despair had already taken root. Morel never learns the truth. But somewhere, unseen, a man watches. He does not destroy blindly. He balances scales first. Then he leaves France. Italy becomes his next stage. Under a new identity, Sinbad the sailor, he moves among smugglers, nobles, criminals, princes. His wealth grows, his mystery deepens. He becomes legend before he becomes visible. In Rome, he observes power structures. Who controls the shadows? Who profits from chaos? He studies bandits, not to fear them, to understand them. Among Roman outlaws, loyalty is currency, violence is negotiation. He befriends them carefully, strategically. He purchases influence in places where governments do not reach. At the Colosseum, under the moonlight, ancient stone witnesses modern execution. A public death, justice, Roman style. Crowds gather not out of morality, but entertainment. Edmond watches. People cheer for punishment when it is not theirs. He learns something important. The world does not need to know the truth. It only needs a spectacle. During Carnival, Rome becomes chaos wrapped in celebration. Masks hide identities. Music hides danger. And in the catacombs beneath St. Sebastian, where the dead sleep in tunnels of stone, deals are made in whispers. A young nobleman is kidnapped by bandits. His life becomes currency. Edmond intervenes, not as a savior, but as a chess player. He arranges the rescue with surgical precision. He pays the ransom effortlessly. The young man, Albert de Morcerf, is saved. Albert will never forget the mysterious count who appeared out of nowhere, because now the Count of Monte Cristo is born.
not officially, but socially, powerful, cultured, untraceable. He arranges a meeting in Paris, a future rendezvous. The trap does not spring loudly. It builds quietly. Danglars, the banker, Fernand, the war hero, Villefort, the magistrate, all thriving, all respected, all unaware that the man they buried has returned, not as Edmond Dantès, but as something far more dangerous, a man with infinite patience, infinite resources, and a memory that never fades. The stage is set. Paris will be the battlefield, and this time he chooses the rules.
Paris does not notice danger when it arrives elegantly dressed. It welcomes it. The Count of Monte Cristo enters the capital not as a rumor, but as a phenomenon. Wealth beyond explanation, manners beyond reproach, confidence that unsettles even the powerful. He hosts a dinner, not extravagant, strategic. Among the guests, bankers, aristocrats, men of influence, and one familiar name, Danglars. The former clerk who once envied a young sailor now sits as a wealthy banker, respected, feared, obsessed with numbers and reputation. The Count studies him across the table. Danglars sees only opportunity, unlimited credit, unlimited connections, unlimited profit. The Count offers it effortlessly. Gold opens faster than memory. The next morning, at breakfast, the manipulation deepens. Casual conversation turns into subtle pressure. The Count displays knowledge he should not have. Military campaigns, financial rumors, private affairs. Each detail lands softly, but precisely. People leave the table slightly unsettled, curious, drawn in. He is introduced formally into Parisian society, to Albert's family, to Fernand, now the Count of Morcerf, decorated soldier, national hero, husband of Mercedes. When their eyes meet, there is no recognition. 14 years and refined power have reshaped Edmond completely. But Mercedes, she feels something. Not memory, not yet, but unease. The Count moves like a man visiting a museum of his own past. He does not react, he observes. Behind him stands a loyal servant, Bertuccio, a man with his own history of vengeance. Years ago, Bertuccio attempted to kill Villefort, not for Edmond, for his own blood feud. He failed, or so he thought. The Count listens carefully to Bertuccio's story, especially the part involving a hidden crime, a buried infant, and a house in Auteuil, a house once owned by Villefort, a house that holds secrets. The Count purchases it without hesitation. He arranges a gathering there. The same men who built their lives on lies now walk through rooms soaked in buried truth. Bertuccio trembles when he enters. He recognizes the place, the garden, the exact spot where a box was once buried. The Count ensures the guests hear fragments of the story, not accusations, hints, whispers. Villefort grows pale because he remembers. Years ago, he buried something in that garden, a child born from scandal, a secret meant never to surface.
The Count does not accuse him. He lets imagination do the work, and imagination is far more violent. Meanwhile, another thread tightens. Fernand's past in the East, in Greece, begins resurfacing. Stories of betrayal, of selling a powerful ally, of blood on his hands disguised as patriotism. The Count feeds these stories carefully into the right ears, not loudly, strategically. A reign of consequences is beginning. Not bullets, revelations. Danglars becomes intoxicated with the Count's backing. Unlimited credit flows like water. He feels invincible. He does not realize he is being positioned like a chess piece. The Count purchases magnificent horses, rare dappled grays, once owned by Danglars. He buys symbols of pride, status, ego. He outshines without effort. The message is clear. There is a new power in Paris, and he cannot be controlled. But the most dangerous moment comes quietly, when Mercedes sees him again, up close, long enough. Her eyes search his face. There is something in the way he speaks, in the restraint, in the sorrow buried beneath control. Recognition does not come fully, but suspicion does. The Count leaves her presence composed, but for the first time since his return, his mask feels heavier. Paris is dazzled. Villefort is uneasy. Danglars is greedy. Fernand is proud. None of them understand yet. The Count is not here to compete. He is here to dismantle. Slowly, publicly, irreversibly.
Paris begins to whisper. The Count of Monte Cristo is no longer just wealthy. He is influential. He speaks calmly about politics, about power, about the illusion of ideology. Monarchists, Bonapartists, Republicans, he sees through them all. To him, loyalty is not about flags, it is about leverage. Men kill for ideas. He invests in outcomes. In his private chambers, another figure appears, Haydée, young, composed, beautiful in a way that carries tragedy rather than vanity. She is not his lover. She is something far more dangerous, a living witness, the daughter of Ali Pasha, betrayed years ago, sold into slavery after her father was handed over to enemies by a French officer seeking advancement. That officer is now known in Paris as the Count of Morcerf, Fernand. Haydée's presence is not emotional decoration. She is evidence, and the Count protects her fiercely, not from affection alone, but because truth, when revealed at the right time, destroys more cleanly than a blade. Meanwhile, he does not forget the Morel family. The son, Maximilien Morel, is honorable, brave, loyal, everything Edmond once was. The Count watches him carefully, tests him, respects him. He sees in Maximilien a reflection of the man he used to be, before betrayal carved him into something sharper. Love also enters the game. Valentine, Villefort's daughter, moves through a house poisoned by secrets. She loves Maximilien, but her family's ambition stands in the way. The Count observes quietly. Love makes people vulnerable. Vulnerability creates opportunity. In another corner of Parisian society, Villefort studies poisons,
Toxicology fascinates him. Control fascinates him. He believes he understands life and death, but inside his own household, someone else is learning too. Slowly, carefully, a pattern of illness begins to emerge among those who stand between inheritance and ambition. No one notices yet, but the Count does. At the opera, society gathers for spectacle, masks, music, applause, appearances. The Count moves through elite circles as if born into them. No one questions his origin, because wealth erases curiosity. The stock market begins to tremble, a whisper here, a hint there, a piece of information delivered casually to Danglars. The banker makes decisions based on confidence. The Count adjusts the board. A sudden shift, a collapse, a flurry in stocks. Fortunes wobble. Danglars reassures himself, this is temporary. He does not realize he is being trained to react, conditioned, prepared for a larger fall. Then the Count introduces two new figures to Parisian society, Major Cavalcanti and his son Andrea Cavalcanti, a noble lineage rediscovered, or so the story goes. Money appears, titles surface, documents confirm everything. The aristocracy accepts them quickly, because they want to, because belief is easier than investigation. But Andrea is not noble. He is a criminal given a costume, a weapon placed gently into the machinery of Parisian respectability. The Count funds the illusion. Why? Because corruption must expose itself from within. Andrea charms, smiles, courts, and slowly entangles himself with Danglars' family. The trap tightens, not loudly, elegantly. Fernand is admired, Villefort is respected, Danglars is powerful, but cracks are forming beneath polished surfaces. The Count never rushes. He knows something they do not. Revenge delivered instantly satisfies anger. Revenge delivered patiently reshapes destiny. And destiny is beginning to move.
In a quiet patch of land just outside Paris, beneath ordinary green fields, secrets sleep. The Count visits places no one else pays attention to, corners of estates, forgotten gardens, silent witnesses to buried crimes. Because the past never disappears, it waits. Inside the Villefort household, power is concentrated in an unexpected place. An old man, Noirtier de Villefort, paralyzed, speechless, but fully aware. His body is stone, his mind is steel. Through nothing more than his eyes, a blink for yes, a blink for no, he controls more than anyone suspects. The Count recognizes something in him, a survivor, a man who has outlived enemies by refusing to surrender his will. When Villefort attempts to arrange Valentine's marriage for political advantage, Noirtier intervenes, not with strength, with precision. A will is revealed, a fortune redirected. If Valentine marries against her heart, she loses everything. If she remains true, she inherits all. The old man protects her from beyond physical limitation. Villefort is furious, but he cannot fight a man who cannot be accused.
Elsewhere, the Count tests another system, communication, the telegraph. Messages sent across France in coded signals. Power travels faster than truth. The Count bribes a telegraph operator to send a false signal, a fabricated political disaster. Markets panic. Danglars reacts immediately. He shifts investments, buys, sells, repositions. Hours later, the correction arrives. The crisis was false. Danglars loses heavily, but not enough to suspect sabotage, just enough to shake confidence. The Count observes. He is mapping his victim's psychology. Inside the Villefort house, illness spreads quietly. One family member after another grows weak. Symptoms are subtle, convenient, targeted. A gardener might rid himself of pests with patience and poison. The Count watches carefully. Someone else is playing with toxins. Madame de Villefort. Ambition has found a chemical solution, one obstacle at a time, and she believes she is invisible. But the Count sees patterns others miss. He has studied toxicology too, not to kill blindly, but to understand those who do. One night, the past begins walking through Paris like a ghost. Caderousse reappears, desperate, greedy, aware that the mysterious Count knows too much. He blackmails. He threatens exposure. The Count does not silence him with force. He gives him opportunity, temptation. Caderousse chooses crime again, and crime chooses consequence. In a dark encounter, betrayal returns full circle. The weak man who once watched silently now bleeds in the street, destroyed by the very corruption he embraced. The Count kneels beside him as he dies, reveals himself, not fully, just enough. Caderousse understands in his final breath. Edmond Dantès lives, but it is too late. At a grand dinner in Paris, the elite gather again. Wine flows, conversation sparkles. The Count subtly directs dialogue toward history, toward Greece, toward Ali Pasha, toward betrayal. Fernand listens, at first confident, then rigid. Haïti enters the room, graceful, composed. Her eyes meet Fernand's. Recognition hits like thunder. The story she tells is calm, detailed, irrefutable. She names the man who betrayed her father, sold him, destroyed her family. That man sits at the table, decorated, respected, Count of Morcerf. The room freezes, reputation cracks, and Paris begins to question its hero. Outside, in the streets, a beggar watches carriages pass. Society's elite move in velvet and gold. The poor move unseen. The Count understands both worlds now. He belongs to neither. He walks between them, invisible when necessary, unstoppable when required. The first domino has fallen. Fernand's honor trembles. Danglars' fortune shakes. Villefort's household rots from within, and the Count remains patient, because collapse is most devastating when it feels inevitable.
Paris begins to whisper. The Count of Monte Cristo is no longer just wealthy. He is influential. He speaks calmly about politics, about power, about the illusion of ideology. Monarchists, Bonapartists, Republicans, he sees through them all. To him, loyalty is not about flags, it is about leverage. Men kill for ideas.
He invests in outcomes. In his private chambers, another figure appears, Haydée, young, composed, beautiful in a way that carries tragedy rather than vanity. She is not his lover. She is something far more dangerous, a living witness, the daughter of Ali Pasha, betrayed years ago, sold into slavery after her father was handed over to enemies by a French officer seeking advancement. That officer is now known in Paris as the Count of Morcerf, Fernand. Haydée's presence is not emotional decoration. She is evidence, and the Count protects her fiercely, not from affection alone, but because truth, when revealed at the right time, destroys more cleanly than a blade. Meanwhile, he does not forget the Morel family. The son, Maximilien Morel, is honorable, brave, loyal, everything Edmond once was. The Count watches him carefully, tests him, respects him. He sees in Maximilien a reflection of the man he used to be, before betrayal carved him into something sharper. Love also enters the game. Valentine, Villefort's daughter, moves through a house poisoned by secrets. She loves Maximilien, but her family's ambition stands in the way. The Count observes quietly. Love makes people vulnerable. Vulnerability creates opportunity. In another corner of Parisian society, Villefort studies poisons. Toxicology fascinates him. Control fascinates him. He believes he understands life and death. But inside his own household, someone else is learning too. Slowly, carefully. A pattern of illness begins to emerge among those who stand between inheritance and ambition. No one notices yet, but the Count does. At the opera, society gathers for spectacle, masks, music, applause, appearances. The Count moves through elite circles as if born into them. No one questions his origin, because wealth erases curiosity. The stock market begins to tremble, a whisper here, a hint there, a piece of information delivered casually to Danglars. The banker makes decisions based on confidence. The Count adjusts the board. A sudden shift, a collapse, a flurry in stocks. Fortunes wobble. Danglars reassures himself, this is temporary. He does not realize he is being trained to react, conditioned, prepared for a larger fall. Then the Count introduces two new figures to Parisian society, Major Cavalcanti and his son Andrea Cavalcanti, a noble lineage rediscovered, or so the story goes. Money appears, titles surface, documents confirm everything. The aristocracy accepts them quickly, because they want to, because belief is easier than investigation. But Andrea is not noble. He is a criminal given a costume, a weapon placed gently into the machinery of Parisian respectability. The Count funds the illusion. Why? Because corruption must expose itself from within. Andrea charms, smiles, courts, and slowly entangles himself with Danglars' family. The trap tightens, not loudly, elegantly. Fernand is admired, Villefort is respected, Danglars is powerful, but cracks are forming beneath polished surfaces. The Count never rushes. He knows something they do not. Revenge delivered instantly satisfies anger. Revenge delivered patiently reshapes destiny, and destiny is beginning to move.
In the Villefort household, grief arrives quietly. Madame de Saint-Méran, Valentine's grandmother, falls ill suddenly. Too suddenly. What begins as weakness becomes agony within hours. Doctors whisper. Symptoms are strange, unclear, unnatural. The Count watches from a distance. He does not interfere, because this death is not his doing. It is someone else's ambition at work. Madame de Villefort moves through the house with composed concern, too composed. Inheritance hangs in the air like perfume. One obstacle removed. But the house is not finished swallowing itself. Shortly after, another death strikes. Valentine's grandfather, the old paralyzed Nortier, survives. He was meant to die, but he doesn't, because he understands what others do not. He recognizes poison. He has trained himself slowly over years to resist small doses. He protects Valentine quietly, warning her through blinks and gestures. Someone is trying to eliminate her, not for hatred, for money. Valentine becomes fragile in the eyes of the household, weak, pale, but not yet dead. Maximilian senses danger. Love sharpens instinct. He meets her secretly, in gardens, in shadows. They speak of escape, of fleeing Paris, but Valentine refuses to abandon her grandfather. Honor binds her. The Count sees their devotion, and something shifts inside him. He remembers who he once was, young, loyal, trusting. He gives Maximilian a promise, cryptic, serious. Quote, "If you trust me, no harm will come to her." Maximilian does not fully understand, but he believes, because the Count speaks not as a manipulator in that moment, but as a man who has already lost everything once. Meanwhile, Madame de Villefort grows desperate. Her son must inherit. Valentine must disappear. Another dose is prepared, carefully measured, calculated. But the Count anticipates it. He has studied toxicology. He knows patterns. He substitutes, intervenes silently. Valentine appears to die. The house collapses into hysteria. Villefort is shattered. He suspects nothing yet, believes fate is cruel, believes tragedy is random. Maximilian is destroyed. He wants to die. The Count stops him. "Wait," he says. "Trust me until the end." Because death is not always death. Sometimes it is protection. Sometimes it is strategy. Inside the Villefort house, fear replaces ambition. Madame de Villefort senses something slipping from her control. Her plan no longer moves smoothly. The Count stands between life and death now, not simply avenger, but judge, and perhaps something more complicated. Because revenge against enemies is simple, but when innocence is at stake, even the most calculated man must choose carefully.
Night falls over the Villefort estate like a sentence being pronounced. In the family vault, cold stone, iron gates, candles flickering against marble, Valentine's coffin rests beside generations of the powerful and the proud. Villefort stands there broken. He believes fate has taken his daughter. He does not yet realize fate had help. But something is wrong. The Count moves quietly through shadows of the cemetery, not as a mourner, as a guardian. Valentine is not dead. She sleeps, preserved by calculation, saved by precision. He has replaced poison with illusion. He has staged death to protect innocence, because vengeance must not consume the innocent. Meanwhile, outside the tomb, another scandal detonates. Andrea Cavalcanti, the charming young nobleman, begins to unravel. His past leaks, inconsistencies in his lineage, whispers about prison records, forgery, debt, crime. Danglars grows nervous. The perfect marriage arrangement starts smelling like fraud. And then a signed statement surfaces, a legal declaration revealing Andrea's true identity. He is not noble. He is a criminal, escaped
rebranded, strategically inserted into Parisian society, and Danglars was ready to make him family. The engagement collapses publicly. Humiliation spreads like fire. But worse is coming, because Haydée is ready. In a formal hearing, she speaks, not emotionally, not dramatically, with documentation, with memory, with undeniable detail. She recounts the fall of her father, Ali Pasha, the betrayal by a French officer seeking advancement, the sale of a family into slavery, and she names him. Fernand is already gone, but his disgrace is now permanent, official, historical. Yanina, the land of her father, confirms it. Witnesses verify it. The hero of France becomes a traitor in record books. Meanwhile, inside the Villefort house, poison moves again. Madame de Villefort, cornered by suspicion, becomes reckless. Her own son is next in line. She prepares lemonade, sweet, innocent, deadly. But something shifts. Villefort begins investigating patterns in his own household. He connects deaths, symptoms, timing, and suddenly the horror crystallizes. It was not fate, it was his wife. He confronts her. The mask collapses. Fear replaces ambition. In desperation, she drinks her own poison and gives it to her child. Silence follows, a silence heavier than any courtroom. Villefort walks through his house like a man already dead. The architect of justice cannot protect his own family, cannot recognize evil under his own roof. The Count observes. This was not his poison, but it was his design that applied pressure, and pressure reveals fractures. Andrea attempts escape. Desperate now, stripped of illusion, he runs towards the only refuge he knows, crime. He hides in the room of a retired baker, small, cramped, pathetic. The grand Cavalcanti reduced to a cornered animal. He is captured, dragged back into custody. The elegant lie ends in chains. Paris watches scandal after scandal unfold. Danglars bleeds money. Villefort loses family. Fernand loses honor and life. The Count stands in the center of it all, unexposed, untouched, but no longer untouched internally, because revenge is almost complete, and completion raises a dangerous question. When justice is done, what remains? Danglars thinks he can outrun consequences. He gathers what remains of his fortune and flees Paris under cover of night. No goodbyes, no dignity, only calculation. But the Count has anticipated every move. Bandits intercept Danglars during his journey. Not random criminals, men loyal to the Count's silent influence in Italy. Danglars is taken, not killed, imprisoned, starved. Not brutally, precisely. Each meal costs him money. Each bite drains his fortune. Hunger becomes mathematics. Gold disappears plate by plate. He begs. He offers what remains. But the Count waits. When they finally meet, Danglars barely recognizes the man standing before him, not because of disguise, because of power. The Count reveals himself calmly. Edmond Dantès. The name strikes harder than chains. Danglars collapses. He confesses jealousy. He confesses cowardice. He confesses that he never imagined consequences. The Count listens, and something inside him shifts. This man is not powerful anymore, not dangerous, not proud, just small, broken. The Count could destroy him completely. Instead, he spares him, strips him of fortune, leaves him alive, not out of mercy alone, but because annihilation no longer satisfies him. Meanwhile, Mercedes and Albert live quietly, far from Parisian society. Mother and son rebuild life without titles, without illusion.
Albert grows stronger for it. Mercedes carries grief, but also peace. They were not meant to be destroyed, only awakened. In another house, Villefort's madness deepens. He wanders through corridors speaking to ghosts, to children who are not there, to crimes that never stayed buried. His empire of law ends in psychological ruin. No execution could be harsher. But the greatest test of the Count's transformation comes elsewhere. Maximilien Morel has lost hope. He believes Valentine is dead. His world has collapsed. He plans suicide. Not dramatic, not theatrical, quiet, final. The Count stops him, demands patience. One more month. Maximilien agrees only out of trust. That same month passes like torture. And then, in a hidden place far from Paris, Valentine awakens, alive, protected. The Count orchestrates their reunion carefully. When Maximilien sees her, disbelief turns into overwhelming relief. Love survives where ambition failed. The Count watches from a distance. He saved them, not for revenge, for redemption, because somewhere along the way he realized something dangerous. He had begun to enjoy playing Providence, and that path leads to becoming the very monster he once hated. He meets with Haïti one final time. She has remained loyal, devoted. She loves him, not the Count, but the wounded man beneath. For years he believed his heart was dead, but it was only buried, and unlike others, it can still rise. He writes letters, settles affairs, leaves wealth where it will heal rather than destroy. He no longer needs Paris. He no longer needs titles. He no longer needs vengeance. Before departing, he leaves Maximilien with 2 words, the only lesson that survived all the blood and calculation. Wait and hope. Not revenge, not power, not punishment. Wait and hope. The Count of Monte Cristo sails away, not as a ghost, not as a judge, but as a man who finally understands the cost of becoming one. Edmond Dantès was betrayed. The Count of Monte Cristo was born. But in the end, a man chose mercy over destruction. And that choice is the only victory that truly matters.
Paris is no longer glittering. It feels unstable, as if something invisible has been moving through its foundations for months. That something now reaches its final targets. Caderousse's greed returns one last time. He attempts burglary, drawn by the rumor of the Count's wealth. Desperation overrides fear. He breaks into the house that once dazzled him. But the Count anticipated it. He confronts him, not with rage, but with clarity. Reveals himself fully. Edmond Dantès stands before the man who once watched silently while his life was destroyed. Caderousse falls to his knees, blames fate, blames others, blames poverty. But the Count speaks calmly. You chose. In that moment, Caderousse understands something terrifying. This is not random punishment. This is design. And when he flees into the night, he does not escape justice. He is stabbed by Andrea, the very criminal he once defended. Greed destroys greed. As Caderousse dies in the street, the Count looks upward and whispers, "Was this your will or mine?" For the first time, he questions the scale of what he has done. Is he justice, or is he playing God? Meanwhile, Beauchamp, journalist, observer, conscience of society, investigates further into the Morcerf scandal.
facts are confirmed, Fernand's disgrace becomes permanent. History will not remember him as a hero, only as a traitor. Another stone falls. Danglars grows increasingly frantic. Financial panic spreads. Investments collapse. Trust evaporates. The Count has manipulated markets patiently, feeding information at exact moments. Now Danglars bleeds money with every decision. He plans to flee, secretly, with what remains of his fortune, but he does not realize even his escape is being watched. Elsewhere, the law closes in on Andrea. He is arrested, charged, brought to trial. Under pressure, he reveals truths about his identity, about his false lineage, about the Count's involvement in introducing him. Whispers begin, but the Count has protected himself carefully. Andrea's testimony exposes Villefort further, because Andrea is not just a criminal. He is the child Villefort once tried to bury, literally. The past rises again, this time publicly. Villefort's courtroom authority collapses. A man who condemned others without mercy now stands judged by consequences of his own sins. The trial becomes spectacle. Paris watches. Power disintegrates in real time. And then the challenge. Albert, Fernand's son, confronts the Count, believing him responsible for his father's ruin. He demands a duel. Honor demands blood. The Count accepts calmly. He is prepared to die because he knows the truth. But Mercedes intervenes. She reveals everything to her son, that the Count is Edmond Dantès, that his father betrayed him, that this duel would mean killing a man wronged long ago. Albert withdraws, publicly apologizes. The Count feels something unexpected. Relief. Perhaps he does not need more blood. But the night is not finished. Villefort returns home to devastation, his wife dead, his son dead, his daughter believed dead, his reputation shattered. He walks through his house like a ghost. Madness creeps in. He searches for someone to blame, but the only face left is his own. The Count visits him one final time, not to gloat, to reveal. He tells him who he truly is, Edmond Dantès. The name strikes like thunder. Villefort collapses mentally. The architect of injustice loses reason entirely. The night ends with silence. 3 families destroyed. 1 banker on the run. 1 avenger standing alone. And for the first time, the Count feels the weight of what he has done. Because justice, when absolute, leaves nothing behind. Paris is exhausted. Scandal has burned through its elite like wildfire through dry wood. But the last knots of fate are still tightening. Andrea Cavalcanti, exposed, disgraced, unmasked, signs what should have been a marriage contract only days before his arrest. The illusion of nobility collapses into paperwork stained with lies. The engagement becomes evidence, a legal trap. Danglars, already ruined financially, is now ruined socially. His name becomes cautionary. He flees toward Belgium, hoping distance can restore dignity. But reputation travels faster than carriages. At a quiet tavern, the Bell and Bottle, desperation replaces arrogance. He bargains, calculates, clings to fragments of fortune. And then the final reckoning comes. He is captured, not violently, methodically, taken to a remote holding place where hunger becomes instructor and time becomes judge. Each meal costs him. Each bite drains gold. Each day strips illusion. When the Count appears before him, Danglars sees not a nobleman, but destiny wearing a human face. The Count reveals himself fully. No masks, no mystery. Edmond Dantès. Danglars falls apart. He confesses everything: jealousy, weakness, cowardice. He expected luck to shield him forever. It did not. The Count listens carefully, and for the first time since the beginning, he does not feel triumph. He feels emptiness. Danglars is already destroyed. To finish him would be unnecessary. So the Count spares him, leaves him alive, broken, without fortune, without influence, because survival with awareness can be a harsher sentence than death. Meanwhile, in Paris, law closes around Andrea. During trial, his true origin surfaces, the illegitimate child once buried alive by Villefort. The past that Villefort tried to hide becomes public fact. Justice does not need the Count anymore. It unfolds on its own. In the Villefort house, silence lingers like smoke after fire. Madame de Villefort's poisoning plot has ended in horror. Her son is dead. She is dead. Villefort wanders in madness, the architect of legal authority reduced to a shattered mind. But one life remains hidden. Valentine, still believed dead. The Count prepares his final revelation. Maximilian Morrel has reached the edge. Grief hollowed him. He kept his promise to wait barely. On the appointed day, the Count brings him to a quiet garden. There, in soft light, stands a figure he thought buried forever. Valentine, alive, breathing, real. The reunion is not dramatic, it is sacred. The Count explains carefully how he substituted the poison, how he preserved her in a death-like sleep, how he removed her from danger, not to manipulate, to protect. Maximilian understands something profound. The Count destroyed the guilty, but he preserved the innocent, and that difference defines him. Heidi stands beside the Count now, not as a tool, not as testimony, as companion. She loves him not because he is powerful, but because she sees the man beneath the myth. For years he believed his heart had died in the Château d'If, but it had only been hardened, not extinguished. Before leaving France, he reflects. He once believed himself chosen by fate to punish, but in punishing, he nearly became crueler than those he judged. The line between justice and vengeance is thin. He stepped close to crossing it. He learned. He stepped back. He leaves Paris quietly. No parade, no applause, only wind against the deck of a ship. Maximilian asks him one final question. What should a man hold on to when everything seems lost? The Count answers simply, wait and hope. Not revenge, not hatred, not power. Wait and hope. Because time destroys arrogance. Time reveals truth. Time restores balance. Edmond Dantès lost 14 years, but he gained something rarer, the wisdom to stop before becoming a monster. And as the ship sails toward the horizon, the Count of Monte Cristo disappears into legend, not as a shadow of fear, but as a reminder.
Betrayal can bury a man, but patience can resurrect him, and mercy can redeem him.
Maximilian Morrel believed he had already survived the worst pain a man could endure. He was wrong. Grief had hollowed him, but the revelation of Valentine's survival rebuilt him stronger than before. Love restored what despair nearly destroyed. The Count watches him closely. Maximilian is what Edmond Dantès once was, loyal, honorable, willing to die for love. But unlike Edmond, Maximilian will not be betrayed by the world. The Count ensures that. Meanwhile, in the shadows of Europe, Danglars signs away what remains of his fortune, every last coin, every last claim. His signature is no longer powerful. It is surrender. He is released with nothing but survival, not executed, not celebrated, forgotten.
And in some ways, that is the cruelest outcome for a man who worshipped status. Back in Paris, the dead are buried at Père Lachaise, names carved into stone: Fernande, Madame de Villefort, her child, Caderousse. Graves do not reveal who deserved what. They simply close stories. The Count visits quietly. He does not celebrate, he does not weep. He studies the final balance. Wealth is divided carefully, the proceeds of hidden fortunes redistributed, some to the deserving, some to secure futures. Maximilian and Valentine are provided for, Morel's legacy protected. The Count does not hoard, he reallocates. In courtrooms across Paris, the remaining threads of scandal unravel. Andrea faces the lion's den, the public court of justice. No aristocratic shield, no fabricated lineage, only evidence. Witnesses speak, documents surface. His false nobility collapses under examination. Villefort, once the embodiment of law, is now a cautionary tale whispered in corridors. His mind broken, he cannot even defend himself properly when his role in past crimes resurfaces. The judge presides, cold, detached, impartial, something the Count once wished existed for him. The indictment is read aloud. Fraud, forgery, murder, conspiracy. Each word echoes through the chamber. Andrea's charm evaporates. He is sentenced. The system that once erased Edmond Dantès now punishes corruption publicly. Justice, slow, imperfect, moves without the Count's interference, and that is important, because he realizes something critical. He was never meant to replace the law, only to expose what it refused to see. In the end, the Count stands alone one final time. He looks back at the chain reaction he unleashed. 3 powerful men destroyed, families reshaped, reputations rewritten, lives spared, lives lost. He could continue. There will always be injustice in the world, but he chooses not to, because becoming permanent judgment would mean losing what remains of Edmond Dantès. Maximilian approaches him one last time, grateful, alive, whole. The Count places his hand on the young man's shoulder and repeats the words that define everything: wait and hope. Not vengeance, not dominance, hope. The ship departs once more, not fleeing, not hiding, simply moving forward. The Count of Monte Cristo becomes legend, not because of the destruction he caused, but because he knew when to stop. And that choice is what separates justice from obsession.
The storm is over, but silence after destruction is louder than chaos. In Paris, consequences settle into place like dust after collapse. Fernande is dead. Villefort lives in madness. Danglars wanders stripped of fortune. Andrea awaits justice. The Count stands alone with what remains. He once believed himself an instrument of fate, but now he sees the cost. Too many graves, too many shattered lives, too close to becoming the thing he hated. Expiation, atonement, not for exposing evil, but for how deeply he let vengeance define him. He revisits the Morel family, not as benefactor, not as legend, as Edmond. He watches Maximilian and Valentine, alive, united, hopeful, proof that destruction was not the only outcome of his return, that love survived the machinery of revenge. And in that realization, something inside him softens. The past does not disappear. It never does. He reflects on the Chateau d'If, on the boy who believed in justice, on the man who replaced justice with calculation. He understands now. Revenge gave him power, but mercy gave him peace. In Italy, old alliances remain. Peppino,
one saved by the Count from execution, greets him not as master, but as legend. Luigi Vampa, the bandit leader, honors him with loyalty rather than fear. Even criminals respect a man who keeps his word. There is unfinished business, Danglars. Broken and starving in captivity, he expects death. Instead, the Count visits him one final time. He reveals everything: the betrayal, the prison, the years stolen. Danglars begs for mercy, and for the first time, Edmond does not feel the need to dominate the moment. He grants pardon, not because Danglars deserves it, but because Edmond no longer needs his suffering. The chain is broken. On the 5th of October, the anniversary of his arrest, the Count marks the date silently. 14 years once began on that day. Now something else begins. Not revenge, not calculation, departure. He leaves Europe quietly. Haiti stands beside him, not as witness, not as weapon, as companion. She loves him without fear, without expectation, without history clouding the present. For the first time since his youth, Edmond allows himself to feel something unguarded. The ship sails toward open horizon, no enemies left, no traps laid, no names to punish, only future. Before disappearing from those who once knew him, he leaves one final message for Maximilian. 2 words, the only philosophy that survived prison, wealth, vengeance, and power. Wait and hope. Because time reveals truth. Time exposes corruption. Time heals wounds that force cannot. Edmond Dantès was buried in a fortress of stone. The Count of Monte Cristo rose in his place. But in the end, the man who sails away is neither victim nor avenger. He is something rarer, a man who chose mercy when he finally had the power to choose anything. And that is why his story endures.